Welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melissa Caprio.
Hi, and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. How are you guys doing? I hope you're doing well. If you can hear it in my voice, yes, I have a bit of laryngitis. I came back from a vacation to New Orleans. I missed the snow, actually. I came back Monday. And I got sick on my way home, 103 fever, right? Isn't that fun? And a touch of laryngitis and a little cough, but I'm okay. I have a really cool guest today, Eric Gee. He is a personality-based life coach. Truthfully, we want to hear more about Eric anyway, so you guys don't even have to listen to me that much. I want to say a big shout out to all my regulars. Thank you so much for listening to me each week. If you're new to my show, just so you know, we record the show live and we put all the recordings up on the archives on Om Times Radio. And you can listen to any show that way anytime you want. And there's always a description in the show so you can find out who my guest is and what we're going to be talking about on that show. I do the same thing on my website, postcardstotheuniverse.com. So I have everything listed under podcasts. And of course, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcasting networks that you use on a regular basis. You can find the shows there. A little bit about me. I'm an author. I'm a photographer. I have a book titled Postcards to the Universe, Harness the Universe's Power and Manifest Your Dreams. And there's 30 manifesting stories in my book. And so what I had people do is create a postcard, kind of like a mini vision board, and I photographed it. And when their story and their manifestation showed up in their reality, I shared their story. And it was great and so much fun to do the book. I loved doing it, and I'm still accepting postcards. If you want to make one, let me know. I tell you how to do it on postcardstotheuniverse.com. You can go right there, and there's a little section on how to create one and where to send it. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, and I can help you. All right, let me get to my guest right away. So I'm going to read you a little bit of his bio. Eric Gee has administered personality-based life coaching for more than 20 years. He built a successful education company that used his personality typing method to better the lives of more than 20,000 students, parents, and teachers. He has devoted the last 2 decades of his life to helping people forge a path to success that works for them. He founded an education company with individualized growth as its mission statement. He has coached teachers on how to work with their students' personal needs and provided business professionals in leadership and non-leadership roles. As creator of utopiaproject.com, more than 500,000 users have benefited from his teachings since the website's creation in 2016. His book, The Power of Personality, is the culmination of decades of research and application. Gee has personality typed over 50,000 people during his career. The main takeaway, our relationship to others will only be as healthy as our relationship to ourselves. Isn't that the truth? And if you want to find out more about him, you could go to his website, which is projectutopia.com. I'm going to spell it for you. www.project, utopia, YOUTOPIA.com. Welcome, Eric. Thanks so much for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me, Melissa. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad that I could still do the show. I'm like, I have laryngitis, but you know what? We want to hear from Eric anyway, so it's fine. So I just thought it was really interesting because in my own mind and just from experience, you see certain people with their personalities and you see how successful they are. And you can see it and you can understand it because their personality is like, they're so charming. They know how to grab people. They know how to like work a room, and then you have other people, and not saying one is better than the other, but other people struggle because maybe they're super shy and they don't like to put themselves out there. So can you share like how did you get into personality typing people? Like what like sparked that for you?
I guess it always starts like with everyone else. It starts with ourselves, right? Like I think when I was a kid, I found that I had a different personality than the majority of people, and that's not a good thing. Generally, I think a lot of people will say like, "Oh, I want to feel special," and I think people want to feel special until they are special, quote unquote, and not like everyone else, and then you feel awful. And I kind of felt that way, not awful, but I felt like I was a little different, and I wanted to delve into that and wonder why my value system and the things that I prioritize are maybe a little different than my classmates or the kids who are around me. And I discovered personality typing and different personality types. And I think there's a huge, like centuries of history of people like researching this kind of thing, or at least studying this kind of thing. And I kind of read a bunch of different methodologies. And as you read in that bio, like I started my own education company. And through that, I developed my own methodology through practical experience. We work with 1,000 students a year, so you're going to get a lot of case studies. And then I could also see how their parents might be different personalities than the students. So how did that work out? How our teachers might be different personalities than the students, and how that conflict works itself out. And at the end of the day, like I started realizing that, when we value different things, that's an automatic cause for conflict. And I think we just need to understand that we can't change that. We shouldn't be changing our values. We just have to understand that other people have different values than our own.
Right. So you said something that you started with yourself. So what is your personality type? And then how many personality types are there, and how do you how do you see the differences? How do we see the differences?
So not to get too technical, even though it always ends up that way, I separate people into 4 different personality packs, I call them. And then within those packs, like a pack of animals.
Oh,
and I generally call it that, like a pack of, because within those packs are 4 separate animal personality types. So 4 times 4 means 16. So I think that's probably a familiar number for anyone who's done a lot of study with personality types. 16 is like the MBTI configuration. But the difference is I go about diagnosing it differently. I think when you start discovering that there are 4 different packs of people, and each one of those packs prioritizes a different value, and one of those packs makes up a majority of the people in the population, then I think you start seeing the reason why we have certain kinds of conflict. Like if the majority of people prioritize safety and security, then you can see that. Right, we see that in life, right? Like, what are we taught when we're in elementary school? Like, these are the rules. Follow the rules. Don't go too far out the box, because that's dangerous. And that's a good thing. I think it's good for elementary school teachers to focus on like creating a safe environment for kids to work. However, the downside is that it tells other kids who may not share those values that maybe they're doing something wrong, or they want something that they shouldn't. And I think that's specifically very unhealthy for kids to grow up thinking.
So what are the 4 different packs? And what's the most common? You said that most of the population is this one certain. It's like what's the traits of that pack?
Yeah, so I split those up into what we call, I guess, evolutionary. Like if we'd imagined a medieval village, right? What roles would we have in that village? So the first one, and the one that you'd have the most of, are gatherers. People bring in the harvest. Right. And so I call them gatherers. They make about half the population, and they prioritize safety and security. Then there's a third of the village that are hunters. And I think we all know what hunters do. And they prioritize excitement. They prioritize like getting the most visceral sensation out of life. So hunting is, clearly something that has benefited from someone who feels that way, right? So if you think about them making a third of the population and gatherers making about half the population, that's almost like 85% of people right there. But even there, you can see like the eventual conflict, right? If you have a parent who wants their kid to be safe and all their kid wants to do is, play on the monkey bars because it's fun and exciting, then there's automatic conflict already. And then the other two, I call them minority packs because there's not that many of them, are the shamans and the smiths. And shamans prioritize self-knowledge, like learning about themselves, teaching other people how to learn about themselves. And then smiths prioritize information. So just cold, objective data.
Huh. That's interesting. So can you have like a dominant personality pack type and then like can you have more than one, Like if you feel like, oh, I'm more the gatherer, but I'm also a smith, let's say.
Yeah, I don't believe that people can share a pack just because the values are so different. I think we can borrow from other people, but at the end of the day, like someone who, trust me, when you get a gatherer together with a smith, the gatherer is going to think the smith is an asshole, and the smith is going to think that the gatherer is very short-sighted. And that's almost without a doubt, that's how they're going to look at each other.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. So the ideas though, those pop psychology ideas that we've always had, like, oh, he's an extrovert, oh, she's an introvert, or you're type A personality, you're an alpha, or it goes by your birth order, like, the oldest is always like they say the most independent, and the youngest is the one who is the most spoiled, like we have all these ideas. What do you think about all of that? Do you think that's like overblown? Do you think that those are myths, or it's just like a pop culture thing?
I think they are right sometimes, but it's one of those things where a broken clock is right twice a day, right? Where, like, now this is more common, like when you think of gatherers making up half the population, they value safety and security, and one of the ways that they make society safe is by following a certain structure and a certain set of rules, and people follow their duty and follow their obligations and their responsibilities. And so if you have the oldest sibling, if your oldest sibling is a gatherer, they will 100% follow what we think of as the older child syndrome. They will be the responsible one. They will can create structure. They will take care of their younger siblings, and that's going to be correct about half the time. So I think that's part of the reason why it became so popular. Is I think people often had older siblings who were gatherers at least half the time, and they're like, oh, okay, this is exactly how older children are. Me myself, my oldest sibling was not a gatherer; she was a hunter. And so I can definitely tell you without a doubt that is not true. Hunters are not ones who take responsibility for their younger siblings. They're more like, no, I'm going to do this because it's fun. And that's also really cool because having a younger or an older sibling that's a hunter was really exciting because she was always like, hey, let's try this. Let's experiment. Let's do this. Let's jump into this situation. So I think in general, I think that's birth order came about because I guess half the time it's right. But it's only because gatherers make up half the population.
So let's talk a little bit about each pack. So you said the gatherers. So what are some of the traits that the gatherers have, and what kinds of jobs do they find themselves in usually? I mean, obviously nothing's 100%, but or that is good for their personality type, I should say.
Yeah, they are really responsible. And once again, I'm going to say a lot of positive things. It doesn't mean that other packs can't be responsible as well. But these are the things that will stand out with gatherers, right? Because they value safety and security, they tend to be pretty organized. They value structure. They like having, I wouldn't say they always like having the 9 to 5, but they definitely like knowing where they're going to be tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. They do not want crazy things flying at them every day where they have to change up their MO. So jobs, they're very detail-oriented. They do not mind doing the same thing over and over again and grinding. I associate them as being grinders. They're very industrious. They work very hard. They work very consistently. So, any jobs that, I always like to say that people will do what they want to do. And then if they like doing that, then they're going to do it more often and they're going to get good at it. So I think jobs where people can have a set kind of thing every day, let's say a pharmacist or a structural engineer. Just to name a few jobs that gatherers really thrive in.
Would a teacher fall under a gatherer? Somebody?
Yes, especially. Yes. Yeah. Especially elementary school teachers. When you think of elementary school teachers specifically, I always think of it's it's Halloween time, so we're going to put up Halloween decorations. Oh, wait, it's Thanksgiving time. We're going to like, they're so good at that, and they do it every single year because they're trying to give kids a sense of normalcy, where it's like, yeah, every October we're going to do this. Every November we're going to do this. Every December we're going to do this. Because I do think that makes us feel safe. And I think as you get further into the ranks of like teaching in terms of, I don't mean ranks, but like as you get older, like junior high teachers might become, you'll start seeing a little bit more different personalities, especially in the college realm. You'll see a lot more Smiths and shamans, but for the most part, elementary school teachers, I'd say 80% are probably gatherers, which is the reason why when we go to elementary school, the first thing we learn are the rules, right? Like, what are the rules? This is where you put your name. This is where you put the date, you know? Things like that.
Yeah. And that's you would say that's half the population of the world are gatherers, you would say, about 50%? You think? Hello? Did I lose you? Eric? Okay.
Sorry.
Hello? Eric?
Hello. Sorry, I got disconnected there.
Yeah.
That's totally my fault.
No. Okay, no worries. You're back. So what I asked was, do you think that half of the population of the world are gatherers?
Yeah, I'd say about that much. You know, obviously these are approximate figures, but you know, we work with 1,000 kids a year, so just overall. And the cool thing was we work with a lot of public schools, so it was just basically every single person in the population. So we can kind of like just from there say, oh yeah, about half the kids are gatherers.
Oh, okay, that's really interesting. All right, so now the hunters. So what is some of their personality traits, and what kinds of jobs or careers would be good for somebody who has that personality?
You know, they're flexible, they're spontaneous, they like things coming, they don't mind things coming at them that are different. In fact, they enjoy that. They like the thought of having to adjust because they don't want the same thing all the time. They might not necessarily be the most steady and responsible, but they're definitely the play hard, work hard kind of people. So like jobs that are intense, but also not necessarily consistent tends to favor them. Like I'm in LA right now. And I think like firefighters tend to be hunters, right? Like a fire by its nature is unpredictable. So it's never going to be the same every time. Like salespeople, a lot of people in entertainment, performers, dancers, athletes tend to be a lot of hunters. Anything where it's a very specific thing that they're doing and they can focus on doing it well, but they don't have to be like the 9 to 5.
Okay, that makes sense. I would think performers, like that's what I would think. I would think performers, artists, singers, rock stars, because there's no guarantees. There's nothing safe about it. You don't know if you're going to make it or not. You know, you're just like you're working for your next gig until you do. So I could see.
And they don't mind that.
And they don't mind that, right? Because you have that personality that suits that for you.
It's so funny when you see gatherers and hunters. It's just like that once again, it's values, right? I think a gatherer prioritizing safety and security would never think that there's another human being in the world who would think, oh yeah, I actually kind of like my job or my life being a little unsteady right now and like unpredictable, you know? So
yeah. So I want to finish, and then that's what I want to talk about in relationships. But so then you said shamans. So shamans are people that would be like what are their personality traits? And are those like a lot of people that are clergy or spiritualists or that would be okay.
Yeah, self-knowledge.
Self-knowledge. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So like exactly what you said. Clergy, spiritual leaders, counselors. Education is also like a sector that you get a lot of shamans. Maybe not necessarily in the elementary school levels, but definitely in the university level. You have a lot of education professors who are shamans. Like just the idea of they love people and learning about people. That's their number one priority and also learning about themselves, obviously. So any job that deals with people on a diplomatic basis is definitely right up a shaman's alley.
Oh, that's really interesting. And then the last one, the last pack is called why the Smiths? Why Smith? I'm just curious. Why
Yeah,
you named it that?
because I love the Smiths, the old '80s band. No, I associate it with the blacksmiths, right? Like, but I didn't want to call them blacksmiths because then we think
Okay.
really old. Because Smiths
Right.
create technology and they create inventions to make things more efficient. Um, so, like a Smith would back in the day, they would create tools, right? But you only really need one or two people creating the tools. You need a lot of hunters using the tools, and it's the same
Right.
with our society now. Like when we think of the Smiths now, they would be like the software engineers, like an Elon Musk or a
Yes.
Zuckerberg or a
Yes.
Gates, you know,
Yes.
what's this guy, Apple, Steve
Yeah.
Jobs,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm. So are
So
the Smiths a little less emotionally attached? Like they're
yeah,
a little bit.
that
Yeah.
was a very nice way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
they can be a little sensitive to people if they don't have
Okay.
enough practice around people. You know, I used to
Okay.
work a lot with software companies, and one of my friends got me into that where I was helping her with her teams. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
let's face it, software engineers are not always the best with people, and so that was really helpful knowing for them to know they're great with information, of course. So they'll take in the information. So learning about personality typing was great for them, so that they can understand. Oh, okay, no wonder why I don't understand these people because they're totally different than me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. It's okay. So now let's talk about relationships.
everybody, let's
So,
do that.
right. So in romantic relationships, is it a problem if you're in one pack and the person you're with, or could there be problems is in another pack? Let's say a hunter with a gatherer, is that does that cause a lot of conflict because of the way their personality traits are?
Here's the cool thing about that. Well, one, there's always going to be conflict in any relationship, right?
Of course, of
Um,
course.
but you'd think that gatherers, since they make up half the population, they would the most common coupling, and also because gatherers like safety and security, and so they are the
Right,
most likely type to want to be in a steady relationship. You'd think
right,
that the most common coupling would be gather-gatherer, right? Because
right.
they make up the most and they want that steady relationship. But actually, the most common coupling is gatherer-hunter. So
Huh.
really, it kind of shows that we want differences when we're looking for at least a healthy relationship where we're both growing.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that theoretically speaking, you don't want it to be too different. So gatherers and
Right.
hunters are different, but they're both very concrete. So they both see the world in a very visceral way, whereas the
Okay.
shamans and the smiths tend to be a bit more abstract. You know, shamans
Okay.
focusing much more on emotions and feelings, and then smiths focusing a lot more on data, information, and ideas. And not to say that the other personalities can't do that, it's just what we prioritize, right? So
Right.
theoretically speaking, hunters and gatherers are great with each other, and shamans and
Okay.
smiths are great with each other.
Interesting. Well, I can see the hunters and the gatherers being good because the gatherers were going to get probably a little bit more excitement from their hunter partner, who's like, let's throw caution to the wind and try this. And then the hunter is probably looking at the gatherer saying, well, thankfully, thank God I have you because you make sure the mortgage is paid and the
Right.
electric is on. And, so I could see how those can be a good match with each other. Now, I'm assuming, and this is just my assumption, I could be wrong, that it's maybe a little bit different in the work environment.
Yeah, yeah. It is funny that work is a little bit different, right? Because you're not
Yeah.
really thinking about, oh, what's the best way for me to grow and complement? It's more like, no,
Right.
we need this objective. How can we get it done?
Exactly.
You know, the fun thing is it's cool to have people within the same pack, but
Uh-huh.
different personalities within that pack. Because you could have like two different types of, let's say Smiths, for example.
Okay.
I don't like, I was thinking of the show House of Cards, even though maybe we're not
Hmm.
supposed to mention Kevin Spacey's name anymore, but
No, that's fine. Go
that
ahead. Yeah.
that pairing was a perfect example of two people working together, and they really were like a work couple, right? Because
Right.
you had both of them were Smiths, but Kevin Spacey's character would be the killer whale. So killer whales are the CEO type. They're very aggressive. They're very
Ah.
straightforward. They stab you in the front. If they're going to stab you, that's where the knife's coming from. Where his wife's
Interesting.
character was a spider, so she's a lot more planning. She's a lot more about contingency planning. Spiders will stab you in the back. They won't stab you in the front. And that combination works really well together, especially in politics. And I think that's kind of a cool way of saying that they're both Smiths, but they do things in a different way based on being different animal types.
Oh, well, that's really interesting. I want to learn more about each personality and the differences. But we're going to I just looked at the time. We're going to take our break here. We take a little break, some commercials for a couple of minutes, and we'll be back and we'll dive more into this. Very interesting. Stay tuned, everybody.
Conscious media for conscious minds. Om Times. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
Hi, I'm Melissa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on Om Times Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
Welcome back. And if you're just joining me, today I have Eric Gee as my guest, and he is a personality-based life coach, and we were talking about the 4, what he calls packs of personality. So let's get into the packs a little bit. And you were mentioning the Smiths, and you were talking about that show, House of Cards. So what would you, and you said you think Elon, it would be considered a Smith, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what would he be?
So he would probably be actually not one of the ones I mentioned before, not the killer whale or the spider. He would actually be a chimpanzee. And so you can kind of split the Smiths up into, there's 4 animals, and you can even split those up into 2 groups amongst themselves, one being since Smiths prioritize information, then the killer whales and the spiders prioritize information so that they can use it. So they tend to be more pragmatic. They tend to be your CEO types, definitely in institutions and companies. And the chimpanzees and the other animal would be the owls. That group of Smiths, they use information because they just think it's cool. So for them, they're just like, oh, you know, like it'd be really cool if I invent something like this. Who knows how it's going to go? We'll see how it goes. You know, and they might have 1,000 bad ideas, you know, but they have the 1,001 idea that they might have might be to put a computer into a phone. And at first, people might be like, why would you want to do that? You know, that seems so dumb. We already have laptops and stuff. And once again, obviously, now we know what we have now, which is with the iPhone.
Right.
And that's kind of how.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Steve Jobs would be a chimpanzee, too. They just love to create cool inventions, and that is kind of like their thing.
Okay. So what? Well, let's do some famous people. We might as well. So, what
Yeah.
would you consider Joe Biden?
Ooh, Joe Biden. He would be a gatherer,
I had a
probably an
feeling.
elephant. Yeah, he's an
Okay.
elephant. And so,
Uh-huh.
so gatherers are always about safety and security, but you can, like with the Smiths, you can split the gatherers up into two separate groups. One that gets
Okay.
safety and security by following a sense of duty,
Okay.
and then the other gets a feeling of safety and security by prioritizing family. And I know everyone always says family first. Everyone's always family first. And then I always say, yeah, and when's the last time you heard about Einstein's family? Like
Right.
no one has,
Yeah.
right? And he had a
Right.
daughter, so it wasn't like she didn't exist. But so Joe Biden would be an elephant, and that would be on the gather side that prioritizes family, and it tends to be a lot more outgoing. They're probably the friendliest of all the personality types. They're just very warm, huggy,
Okay.
touchy-feely. They probably have the largest social circles out of all the types. And of course, as we know, one of Joe Biden's strengths as a politician was just that people trust him, people like him, and he knows everybody. Everybody knows him.
And he knows everybody. That's true.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do Kamala Harris. What is she from what you?
Oh, I like these because these are bouncing all around, which I like.
Yeah.
So Kamala Harris, from what I know, seems to be a fox, and that would be a hunter type.
Oh,
So
I can see that.
yeah. Yeah, it's a very common politician type, by the way, the fox. So hunters you can break them into two parts. The foxes and the sharks are on one side, and they get their excitement through like the adrenaline rush of taking risks. And then the peacocks and the butterflies are on one side, and that's kind of where you get a lot of the artists and the performers. They get their excitement from consumption. So Kamala's a fox. Foxes are like the typical salesperson. I don't want to say they're shameless, but they can be. They're shameless salespeople. They sell.
Yeah.
They're very good at adjusting and telling people what they think the other person wants to hear. And that sounds terrible, but it's not really. Like they're just good at knowing their audience, and they adjust based on that. So
okay,
yeah,
I would think a prosecutor too. That would be a good job.
Yeah,
a prosecuting attorney would be that personality type. Okay, so of course we have to ask about Trump. So what is his personality trait?
Okay, so here's the beauty of the personality. I don't know if you can call it beautiful, but Trump is also a fox.
Okay,
so
that's interesting.
And here's another fox too. Bill Clinton's a fox. So if you take the three of them, you can see a certain kind of, obviously Kamala is a woman, and being a woman, there are different, obviously, life experiences it's going to manifest itself differently. But for the most part, especially with Trump and Clinton, you can definitely see where they are on opposite sides of the political spectrum, even though maybe that wasn't true 30 years ago. But you can probably definitely see them hanging out with each other, like, and having fun and kind of going, hey, yeah, like, because they're going to have similar personalities in terms of like what they like doing.
That's so interesting. So most politicians would be hunters, you would say? I mean, obviously not everybody, or hunters and gatherers. Those two groups seem to be in the political spectrum.
It's interesting because I think, especially if you go through presidential history, you'll find a mixture of almost all different types of personalities. In fact, Smiths actually have an outsized influence because some of the, I guess we'd call them our greatest presidents were Smiths. But for the most part, I think overall, if you take the average politician, I think politics is a very hunter kind of job. I liked how you mentioned that Kamala being a trial lawyer or being a prosecutor is very fox-like, and that's very true. In law, most people who are into being trial lawyers and actually having to work a trial tend to be hunters or people. But when you go into like the more scholarly aspects of law or the contract law, you're going to find other personality types, because obviously to be a contract lawyer, you don't really have to do a whole lot of performing, quote unquote, right? But you do have to be very detail oriented.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? What about Jimmy Carter? What would you consider him? He was a very different kind of a politician. So what would he be?
Jimmy Carter, he'd probably be a gatherer, but a bear. So kind of similar to Joe Biden, but a little bit, I think the biggest difference would be the bear is just a little bit gentler and quieter. Or more soft-spoken, I think.
Yeah, well, and he was so inclusive of everybody, so it was like, and he was so soft, and he was so, and just including everybody, no matter what your differences were. So I just thought that would be interesting, just to compare and contrast the different political, people that we're all aware of right now, with everything that's going on. Okay,
Oh, right, yeah.
so yeah, everything that's the crazy world we live in. So, can your personality type change? Is that possible, or once you're born a certain way, that's your personality type?
So I will say I don't know when our personality type fully manifests itself, but I definitely don't believe that we change as much as we grow. And I say that quite a bit. I think we can grow into better versions of ourselves or worse versions of
Okay.
ourselves. But I definitely don't like to tell people you can change, because I think when oftentimes the person who's saying that everybody can change generally just wants people to change into them, right? They're like, no, you can change. You can be a lot more like me, versus
Right, of
like a
course.
better version of you. And I think in general, yeah, I think if we do genuinely find ourselves being a different person when we're older, it probably means that we just fully didn't understand ourselves when we were younger, and we're just finding more
Got it.
about ourselves. And that happens quite a bit,
Yeah.
right? Especially if you're like a minority personality and your parents and all the people that you're around are very different than you, then you're going to assimilate in a very unhealthy way, and you're going to like maybe repress a lot of what you truly are to try to be what is around you. And I think that's
Right.
when, a lot of people are like, I found my tribe, or I found my people in my 40s. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's probably because you found a lot more people who had your personality.
Have my personality. Well, you know what? That just made me think of something. Now, this word gets thrown around a lot, that people diagnose other people, and obviously you need a real diagnosis to be considered a true narcissist. But let's say you are a true narcissist. What personality type do narcissists typically fall under?
That's funny because, in my book, I have this thing called deviant roles. And the deviant
Okay.
role is basically your personality at its worst. And so, I mean,
Okay.
it's written in kind of a funny way, like the titles are like fascist, cult leader,
Right.
things like that. Because I do believe that our strengths also manifest as weaknesses as well. So for every
Okay.
organized person, they also might be too rigid, right? So
Right, of
the
course.
funny thing is there is a deviant role called the narcissist, and it's for the peacock, the hunter, one of the hunter types. And peacocks are like the natural performers. They love attention. Of course, if you love it too much and you feel the whole world revolves around you, then I think those are narcissistic tendencies, right?
Oh, no. Hello? Did we drop you
Hello?
again? Yeah.
No, I'm here.
Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
You cut
Yeah.
out for a second. You said the peacocks
Oh,
are performers. If you love it too much, then what happens?
then you just become, I think, ingrained in that, like, look at me, everything's about me, the whole world revolves around it. And I think we define that as a narcissist, right?
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. And so that would be under the hunter path,
Yeah.
and then the peacock falls under that. That's so interesting. So for people that are listening and they want to know their own personality type, you have something, I think, on your website, right? That people can
Yeah.
answer some questions that will help them. Like, yeah, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you can go on. So I have two websites. One's projectutopia.com, and that's more of like the life coaching aspect.
Okay.
And I have, you just flip it around, utopiaproject.com. And that was like my original website, and that's a WordPress site, so it's a little bit more article based. But we also have an assessment on there that you can take and figure out what animal type you are, with the disclaimer that I'm not the hugest fan of online tests. They can be a bit cookie cutter. Even mine is, I mean, it's just questions, right? Like, so not to say that I'm trying to encourage people to buy my book, but I will say that if you buy the book goes over the entire methodology, and you'll really be able to find out for sure what you are and the people around you. But for now, just go on utopiaproject.com, take the assessment, and it'll tell you are a baboon, let's say, and then it'll have a little bit of a description, and people can read that, and if it matches, it's perfect, and if it doesn't match, then you might want to read some of the other types around it.
Yeah. And so that can help us with, in our careers, right? Like knowing what our personality type is can help us in our relationships, our family relationships, our romantic relationships, and our careers. So it's kind of good to know where you fit in. And I'm sure a lot of people probably get like these ahas, like, oh, that makes sense why I'm like this, right?
Yeah, No, we had a writer on our site who wrote about how she felt she was an alien until she started learning about personality types, and then she was like, "Oh, okay, I'm not an alien. I'm just only 2% of the population," you know. And with jobs,
She
I
was
had
a
a my
Smith? Was she a Smith? She was a Smith?
she was actually a shaman. She was a
Oh,
shaman.
shaman. Okay.
Yeah, only because Smiths, they are also a small percentage, but I will say Smiths generally don't care. They're the type who's like, yeah, no one's like me, and everyone else is an idiot, so I don't care. I'm going to be how I am.
Okay.
You know, that's generally
Right.
how they act. Once again, that
Yeah.
can also have weaknesses, right? Because maybe they don't have as many
Right.
friends. They can be a bit antisocial. But on the flip side, shamans have the problem of, since they're trying, they feel like they want to fit in and connect with people, but they aren't connecting with people, then that
Yeah.
can leave them feeling a bit insecure through most of their lives. And I always say that shamans don't have a midlife crisis. Their entire life is a midlife crisis. They're constantly doubting themselves and wondering whether they're doing the right thing, which is kind of nice though, because
Right.
when you turn 40, if you're a shaman who's 40, you're like, oh, well, no, I've done all this work. I've done the self-reflective work. So I kind of feel pretty much more comfortable about myself and what I'm doing and what I'm doing in my life than maybe a gatherer
Right.
would, who has spent their entire life
Makes sense.
being told that their
That
values
totally
are correct.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So, you said, now, did you tell us what you told me your sister is a hunter, but did you say you're a gatherer?
No, I'm actually a shaman. So
You're a
that was probably why I
shaman.
was such a weirdo as a kid. Yes, I'm a shaman. I mean, you know, obviously self-knowledge was a big priority for me. And another big priority for shamans is, of course, sharing that and helping people find their self-knowledge. So you were talking about aha moments. That's probably the greatest joy I get in life, is when someone who I'm helping is just like, oh, okay, now I feel better about myself. I feel like I feel better about not only myself, but the path that I'm on.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think that it would be very helpful, especially for people who feel like your friend who said, I'm an alien, like I can't relate to anybody and people can't relate to me, and then like knowing this about yourself is probably so very helpful. Oh my God. It's really fascinating because, I mean, how many people are on the planet now? 8 billion, something like that, maybe even more. So, and all these personalities and clashings and, trying to get along and unfortunately hating each other because you're different and I'm different. It's just like knowing, I always think knowledge is power, that's just the more you know, the better, right? So I just find that it's another layer about knowing ourselves and knowing how other people operate in the world, right? It can only be helpful. So, I mean, I know you can't really tell because you don't know me at all, but just from talking to me, would you have an idea of what you think personality type I am?
I have a good idea of it. Can I ask you one question?
Okay.
Would you say you were a good student? How were you in school? Like
yes,
back in the day?
I was a good student.
Like, didn't you take? Were you ever? Oh, sorry, I said one question, but I'm asking a follow-up question. Did you ever like start a club? Did you ever start a club like recycling club or like environmental club or anything like that?
I never started a club, but I was in a couple of clubs. Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like you ever do like tell people too much information about yourself, like TMI, talk too much, like, oh my gosh, like I just had diarrhea yesterday and it was terrible. You ever do anything like that?
No.
Oh,
no.
okay.
I do share a lot on the show since I've had the radio show. I share a lot about, my challenges that I've been through, but no, I'm a very private person. But I don't mind people on the show knowing stuff about me because I want to be authentic. But I'm private. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, well, obviously I was gearing. I already knew you. I'm definitely 100% sure you're a shaman. And so now I'm like, oh, which shaman? I was trying to figure out which one. So I'd probably say a humpback whale would be my guess.
Okay.
And humpback whales do a lot of energy work. Like they really believe in like energy. Like we all have core energy and like kind of they're very sensitive to that and sensitive to other people's energy. But they are more private. Oh, perfect. So
I do energy work every morning because I'm very sensitive to other energies. Yeah, very sensitive.
They're kind of like they're like an emotional antenna. I mean, shamans are like that in general, but the humpback whale probably has, I guess, the biggest bandwidth or the largest bandwidth for that.
Yeah. I'm very, very sensitive to energies. And this isn't something that I realized until I was older, after 40. Like you said, 40. I don't know, 40 is like the magic number where you start, like, you don't really care as much what other people think about you and you start really wanting to know yourself. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah,
Yeah,
that,
it sucks
that's
for
really,
shamans
really
because
interesting.
shamans have to deal with that quite a bit. I have a shaman student, and she's always telling me I don't want to grow up, and I know exactly what she means by that. I
Right.
know it's not like I don't physically want to grow up. It's more like so I told
I
her, I was
know
like, well, yeah, you don't have to grow up to how other people think that you need to grow up. You can grow up in your own way.
Yeah, I know exactly how she feels. I know exactly. I didn't want to grow up either, right? There's something about that childlike innocence, and yeah, it's really, really interesting. So, let's see, who else can we talk about that's very famous that people would recognize? I don't want to just politicians. Let's do Taylor Swift. Let's do people who know somebody, who is big, who's very popular. What
Okay,
would you say she
Taylor
is?
Swift would. I mean, now this is someone this is going to sound weird. I don't know much about Taylor Swift. Obviously, I know who she is and that
Okay.
she's super popular.
Right.
But my natural instinct would definitely say she's a hunter, and my guess would be
Okay.
either a peacock or a butterfly. And
Okay.
they're both performing types. I think of the butterfly as gentler, softer.
Mm,
I don't say more quiet, but I think of like Bob Dylan would be like the
yeah.
butterfly. A peacock
Okay.
would be more like Jack Black, Kevin Hart, kind of like out there and very loud and big. So I don't know
Okay.
enough about Taylor Swift, but I definitely think she probably fits into one of those two categories for sure.
That's really, really interesting. That's so fascinating with people's personalities. Now, you know what I want to ask you? Maybe you don't know yet, or you're just discovering this part of it. You know how there's so many people now that are on the spectrum of autism?
Hmm.
What would
Right.
you say their personality type is? I mean,
You
I don't want
know,
to lump everybody in the same group because that's not necessarily fair, but I don't know if it seem to consistently be a certain type.
we used to work with a lot of students, obviously, that were special needs, and they all had
Mhm.
IEPs. And, I don't, once again, I don't want to lump people in, but when you're talking about just straight
Yeah.
autism, like it tends
Mhm.
to be very Smith-like. Like
Yeah,
there's a very
okay.
large correlation between autism and people with the Smith personality because they are very
Mhm.
like objective. They're very like focused. They're very focused on objective information, and
Right.
data, and they're maybe not necessarily the best at reading at people too well.
R-
Um,
Reading social cues is easily, yeah. That's what
yeah.
I would assume. Like that's what my judgment would be. I don't like to judge, but that's what I would assume that they would fall under the Smiths pack. So, can you name just a couple of the animals from each pack that you want to share? Let everybody kind of
Yeah.
understand. Yeah,
Uh,
I would love to know a little bit more about it. Go ahead.
I'll try to keep it. I'll say since there's 16 animals, I'll try to keep it to one word. And once again, don't kill me on the
Okay.
simplicity here, but it's just this
Okay.
will probably be the energy that this particular animal gives off. So we'll start with the
Okay.
gatherers.
Okay.
A stag. A stag. The word I think of a stag is bossy. And some of the
Okay.
words are going to sound negative, but I don't mean them that way. But they will come off as
No,
bossy.
no, no. Okay.
Stag,
Yeah.
bossy. There's a beaver, and they come off as serious.
Okay.
Elephant, as I mentioned before, like Joe Biden, friendly.
Mhm.
Uh,
Okay.
a bear, kind of like you had mentioned Jimmy Carter, they come off as kind.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
now we'll go on to the hunters. We have
Okay.
like the foxes. Foxes come off as
Mm.
cool. That's like the number one thing. They're just cool, you know.
Okay.
Uh, Sharks come off as mean. And they're not
Okay.
mean, by the way, but they just come off that way. Sorry, my sister's a shark.
Right.
A lot of people
Yeah,
think
yeah,
she's
yeah.
mean. Peacocks, they come off as loud.
Mhm.
Butterflies come off as gentle.
Mhm.
And then we're on to the shamans. We have the dolphins, and the dolphins come off as TMI, like pop. They too much information.
Got it.
Uh, Pandas come off as reserved,
Okay.
and then we have the baboons. Baboons come off as charismatic, and
Okay.
the humpback whales come off. Oh, this is not one word, but humpback whales come off as old souls.
Mm. Okay. Yeah.
Um, I guess space cadet would be the other way they might come off.
Okay.
And then last but not least, we have the Smiths. Killer whales come off as strategic.
Okay.
Spiders come off as cold. Chimpanzees come off as, like, I always associate them as the cool nerd.
Okay.
And then the other word I use for owls is just nerd. They come off as nerds. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Yeah, I don't mean that in a bad way. Nerds are cool. You know, they know a lot of information. Now, I have a friend who's an owl, though, and he's like, hey, owls are not all geniuses, okay? You say Einstein, and he is an owl, and he's a genius, but owls just know a lot of stuff. And he's like, I'm an owl, and I just know a lot about fantasy football and massage. That's it. So we just know a lot of information. Right. That doesn't mean I'm a genius. It just means I know a lot about it.
That's so interesting. So in your book, do you talk about all of this in your book, and you have it broken down for people who are interested in reading more about it? Cool. So where can people like find your book if they're really interested and learning more about this?
Well, you know, as they say, you can find it anywhere you buy books. So you can go on Amazon if you want to give Jeff Bezos your money. Amazon, it's on there. You can also go to your local bookstore and just order through there. My publisher will get it out there to you. Barnes & Noble, you can order there. But really, I mean, it just depends on where you want to buy a book. If you want to support your local bookstores, I always say go there. Or go to bookshop.org, because bookshop.org, you can order it online and then just say, like, have the proceeds go to your local bookstore.
The Power of Personality. So if people are listening, that's the title of the book, The Power of Personality. So do you work one-on-one with people?
I do. I do life coaching and writing coaching. I actually started off as a writing coach first, but what I discovered is the key to teaching writing is teaching people to find their voice, and you can't find your voice if you can't find yourself.
That's true. It's very, very true. So if people want to work with you one-on-one and they're really interested in exploring this about themselves further, how should they reach out to you? How should they contact you? Do you do a free consultation, or like how to see if you guys would be a good fit, if your personalities align?
That's actually a good, personalities have to align, right? You can go on projectutopia.com. There's a tab there that says projectutopia.com/university, and you can message me through my website. And from there, you know, we can set up an appointment, and it could just be like an introductory kind of like meet and greet and see if we're a good fit. And that's how I go from there. And that's where I usually find out about my students in that meet and greet too. So it helps me plan out our sessions, you know. Right.
Of course. Okay. That makes so much sense. So Eric, is there anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about today that you want to mention? I think we only have like 2 minutes before we're ready to wrap up.
Oh, no. I mean, I was happy to talk to you. I had a lot of fun, and, you know, I could do another hour or 2 hours just because I'm a baboon and we talk a lot. So, you know, can't help that.
No, well, I really am. This is really fascinating to me because I am super interested in understanding things and understanding other people and understanding I'm always asking, like, why did this happen? Or why is this like this? You know, I'm like the constant whys, right? So the more knowledge that I have, the happier I am. And then part of the reason that I love doing the show is because I love spreading the knowledge. I don't want to just keep it for myself. I want to spread it out. So that's why I'm so like a lot. I love to have guests on my show. I just don't want to hear myself talk, for an hour. I want to talk to other people who are doing interesting things, right? And spreading the knowledge. So to me, it's fascinating. And I'm definitely going to look up the shaman. And you said a humpback whale, right? The humpback whale.
I would look that up.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's the one I would go for. I think you're a humpback whale. And, once again, it's all about the connecting with people, right? And helping them grow for us as shamans, right? So. Yeah.
Well, and I'm definitely going to do the personality test. Right now, just so everybody knows, I've been sick, so I'm literally doing my interview in my bed right now with a heating pad on my chest. But it was so great talking to you, and I'm so glad that we did the show. Thank you so much, Eric. I really, really had a good time. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave, and I'm wishing everyone a wonderful week filled with the joy, abundance, and love.
Peace.